welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable on the budget. Well, this was supposed to be the big ticket budget after demonetization, a budget that would offset all the pains of the last 3 months. Has that happened? Has Jaitley delivered? Well, joining me on the roundtable is Manish Tewari, former Union Minister and Congress spokesperson, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, he is a member of the NDA and also a Rajya Sabha member, Panda, Lok Sabha MP and also member from the BJD, and Dr. Subramanian Swamy, member from the BJP and Rajya Sabha MP. Manish, let's begin with the criticism first. Has this budget delivered?
Well, the budget, with all due respects to the finance minister, is honestly a non-event, because if you look at it, it's maybe bits of crony socialism thrown in with some amount of non-balancing of the budget books. Because if you look at the escalation that is projected in terms of the public expenditure, and then you juxtapose it with the fiscal deficit, those figures do not match. So therefore, there is nothing to spur private investment, which has been in the negative. There is nothing insofar as employment generation is concerned. There is, of course, a token increase on certain poverty alleviation and rural development schemes, which when this government was in the opposition, it bitterly criticized, especially Manrega, which they said is a well digging or a or a pit digging scheme. So eventually, if you look at it, you step back and look at it, with this government having crossed the halfway mark, there is no focus, there is no broad direction or trajectory to the economy.
Rajiv, are we just discussing a non-event, as Manish would say, or there is something to discuss?
No, I think Manish is saying what he has to say, but I think, I think if you are expecting the budget to be an earthquake or a firework or these different things that the Congress characterizes it as at different times, then of course you'll be disappointed. I think the budget is a statement.
Rahul Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi's earthquakes.
It's a statement of what the government intends to do, how it intends to spend its money. And in the budget, there are a number of very significant things. I think the fact that the fiscal headroom has grown, despite the fact that there is global uncertainty, there is clearly headwinds on the crude prices, there is headwinds coming in from the major economies like the US in terms of their interest rate movements. This has been a budget that follows through on what has been a disappointing year in terms of slowing growth. And one of the things Manish mentioned, which I agree with and I have written about it extensively, is that the fact that the economy today has very little private investment activity going on, and that is stalling and is sluggish. So the government, instead of just doing nothing, has stepped up to the plate and increased and enhanced public investment. And therefore you see the allocations in rural, allocations agriculture and infrastructure considerably go up. And there is a lot more to say about the budget in terms of the overall narrative of the government going forward, in terms of cleaning up the economy, the quality of the economy, which Mr. Jaitley referred to as a C in the TEC triumvirate. So I would not be as dismissive as Manish is. I think the budget is a significant step forward. It does, in a sense, move the ball from the demonetization window that we've had in the last 4 months forward to a year where I hope to see growth.
You know, Jay, I've been watching all the TV debates. Everybody's saying it's a good budget, but no one is really saying it's an excellent budget so far. So have we been a little shortchanged?
You know, no budget is entirely great and no budget is as bad as some people make it out to be. Let me try and give you a balanced view. Let me give you 3 good points that I like about the budget and 2 disappointments that I have faced.
Okay.
So, for me personally, the single biggest aspect of this budget were the steps announced for the first steps really to clean up political funding. Because you may be aware, this has been a passion of mine. I have been writing for many years to the Election Commission, to the Law Commission. I've been writing op-eds in major newspapers and magazines and on discussions such as yours. Yes. And I have made very specific suggestions. Now, the reduction of the anonymous donation limit from 20,000 rupees to 2,000 rupees, it will not eradicate black money, but it will make it much harder. It will make it 10 times harder. And this is something that had specifically been recommended by the Election Commission only about a month or so ago. Now, you may say that this isn't going far enough, but the fact is, in my 17 years in Parliament, this is the first concrete step that any government has taken. So I welcome this very heartily. Number 2, the fiscal deficit. You know why this is most important is when a country rating is concerned, when Standard & Poor's or Moody's gives us a sovereign rating, the single biggest factor that they look at is the fiscal deficit. Now you can argue that they haven't met the 3% goal for next year that the FRBM committee had recommended, but look at the trajectory. They inherited 3.9% deficit and they have progressively brought it down to 3.5% in 2.5 years, and going down to 3.2%, the trajectory is very clear, and this shows that there is a commitment to fiscal responsibility despite populist pressures. So this is wonderful. Third good thing that I have noticed in the budget is the correction of some of the anomalies in the tax structure, particularly for the lowest salaried class. You can argue about other aspects of the tax thing, but it was weird that micro, small and medium scale enterprises, MSMEs, and the small lower middle class salaried taxpayers were being burdened with a higher rate than people like you and me and others like Rajeev who can afford much more. Now that correction I think is a very, very necessary correction. I think these are three good things. Two disappointments I want to quickly mention to you. In the spirit of fiscal federal cooperative federalism and fiscal responsibility, one of the things we had been expecting is that the transfer of funds to the states would have gone up significantly. This is something that has been bandied about, but despite the 14th Finance Commission's recommendations, 32% going to 42%, many central schemes have been pruned. So net states haven't gained much. As BJD's President Naveen Patnaik has pointed out, the states are getting a paltry growth of 5.5% in resources being transferred to the states. This is a disappointment. Finally, one other disappointment I'd like to mention is there was talk of a universal basic income. This is the hottest topic in global economics, and whether universal or whether targeted for the poorest, a basic income is something the time has come for us. I've been advocating this, many economists have been talking about this. We are staring at a new era. Look, let's understand this final point. We have 7.1% GDP growth rate today. In normal circumstances, it would be considered fantastic, but this is the new normal because 7.1% today does not create the same number of jobs as it used to create 10 or 20 years ago. So I would have wanted the solution that people are recommending throughout the world, some kind of a basic income, and that has not happened. So overall, I would say it's a good budget, got many good points, some disappointments.
Okay, now Jay's list of disappointments was less than the list of plus points. Is your balance sheet like that?
Well, first of all, do you expect me to say what you expect me to say?
Well,
I'm in a dilemma because I'm a professor of economics, but I'm also a party man. So I'll try to do my best by relying on documents which the finance minister and the finance ministry has presented. That's the economic survey, his speech, etc. Now you see, as an economist, when we look at policy, we look at four things. How the objectives are defined, how the priorities are delineated, then the strategy that is going to be followed to achieve those objectives according to those priorities, and the resource mobilization measures. These are the four things. Now, when a non-economist produces a budget, which has been the tradition anyway in our country, it's all basically a kind of a cafeteria approach, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. You have to look at it in terms of, my opinion is the objectives should have been defined as the problems facing the financial system of India, which is we are in a debt trap. For instance, if you look at budget at a glance, you will find out that the amount of money that we are taking as loans is almost equal to the interest and amortization of past loans. According to this, 19 paisa comes in, 18 paisa goes out. That's there in the budget at a glance. Then that's called is that you are very close to a debt trap. Then the thing that has not been addressed at all, except peripherally, is that the banks are almost have eaten up their capital. They need a huge infusion. maybe 3 lakh crores. What has been set aside in this budget is only 10,000. Maybe they don't have more money to give. And finally, you see, for all the talk of lowering taxes, I find from the budgeting that actually 88,000 crores new tax revenue is provided for. Now, where is it going to come from? And you see this income tax, you say one slab is 5%, the other one is a huge jump, which makes no sense. And in the context of the vast expectation that after the demonetization, more such bold steps would be taken. For example, I would have thought abolition of income tax would have been a relief for everybody. I mean, everybody has a favorite policy, but in this case. So what I would say is that this budget is not a budget of an economist. It's basically what is, I mean, once the headlines of today and tomorrow, which, the media doesn't understand economics, that also I know.
Media doesn't understand, finance minister doesn't understand.
Is it a fact or not? I mean, they're not trained to be economists. So, therefore, if as an economist you ask me, I think this budget is woefully inadequate for the challenge we are facing, which I've pointed out. The debt trap in the budget, the headwinds that he's talking about. When the headwinds are in your favor, you didn't do anything. Now the oil prices are going to rise, so then you can't blame it. If you took the advantage of the headwinds at one stage, then you have to also say that this is how I'm going to match it. You can't blame it on something else. So as an economist, I think I would give it a C grade. Wow, but as a party man, I would give it A grade.
Okay, well, that was him doing his lawyer's talk. Manish, this income tax slabs, if the whole idea of black money was to bring in, more people paying taxes and evading, less of evasion of taxes, by increasing the tax slab for 50 lakhs and above, aren't you actually scoring a self-goal? Because people will now find ways to evade taxes.
Before I come to that, Priya, let me address the question of campaign finance reform and the political finance reform which Jay raised. First of all, in my respectful opinion, it should not have been in the budget. It's a stand-alone albatross which needs to be addressed. Number two, this limit actually of exemption stood at 10,000 rupees till 2003. It was an NDA government, a previous NDA government, which raised it from 10,000 to 20,000. Essentially, this means nothing at all. It is window dressing. Because now when you bring it down to 2000, what does section 13AB of the Income Tax Act say? It says that you are not supposed to maintain any record of donations below that ceiling. So all that a political party has to say, as the ADR report pointed out, that 67% of our funding has come from sources which are below 2000 and we don't have to maintain any records. So this means absolutely nothing at all. It's zilch. Number two, on the question of bonds. You see, if the entire idea was to maintain anonymity, that purpose does not get served because the RBI bond will have a number. And that number can easily be related to that particular transaction in the account of a registered political party. And number two, presuming you want to go ahead with the bonds, why are you only restricting it to registered political parties? Why not candidates running for elections? Because if you look at the new norms which have been put out by the Election Commission, every candidate has to open a fresh bank account when he contests an election. So why can't that bond be redeemable in the bank account of a candidate? So therefore, that is insofar as campaign finance reform is concerned. Insofar as income tax slabs are concerned, look, the 600-pound gorilla in the room, which nobody wants to address because it is completely politically inconvenient for everybody, is the fact that you have a very narrow tax base. On that tax base, you cannot sustain the development of a billion plus people. Yashwant Sinha at one point in time when he was finance minister tried to extend it by taxing the income of mandis. It got stuck down by the Supreme Court in a different context altogether. But the time has come to really, what Dr. Swamy was talking about, bold decisions which really widen the tax base. In fact, what you are really doing out here is narrowing an already narrow tax base.
That's true.
But of course, my bold decision would be eliminate all taxes.
May I make
Would
a
you
quick,
agree with that?
May I make a quick intervention? You know, look, I agree that the cleansing of political funding has not gone far enough, but I don't agree that it is zilch, because if it counts for zilch, then when this idea was mooted by the Election Commission 4 or 5 weeks ago, the Congress Party should have objected to it, saying that it doesn't mean anything. They didn't object. In fact, they welcomed it. So, you know, to welcome something when the Election Commission puts it out, and then to object to it when the
It's like you welcome the
budget
idea, but not the implementation.
Let me just complete.
The thing is, if at all you want to take this to a logical conclusion,
I agree.
Then you have to eliminate all cash
Look,
donations.
let me come to this point.
So therefore, 20,000 or 2,000
No, it
is
makes
a
a
non
big, it
sequitur.
makes a difference. It will not eradicate black money, but it will make life much more difficult. This is not the format to go into details, but I've written extensively about it.
Collect funds for the party.
I have also
He only donates.
I have also spelled out a lot of things that need to be done.
Okay.
You know, such as Election Commission should be given the power to forcibly audit parties and to impose penalties and many other things. But it does count for something. Let's not totally diss it.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and I'm going to ask Rajeev to comment on two things: the widening, the tax, income tax slabs that have come up, and also the topic of political funding. But after a break. Welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are discussing the budget and has it delivered what we had all expected it to. Rajeev, before the break, we were talking about the tax slabs. Would you comment on that and also the political funding?
No. So I think we are all in agreement around the table, and I think most people who study the economy are agreed that the tax base has to be widened. It's not a new revelation. It is not. But the finance minister openly admitted that we are a nation almost of tax evaders, and therefore we need to do something about it. Now, there are two approaches to it. I agree with you that there is one approach which is to go at the bottom of the tax pyramid and say, let's enlarge the base there, which is the approach he has taken, which is to say, I will increase exemptions and make it cheaper for people, less expensive for people to be tax liable and tax compliant. The other approach is, and there is a school of thought about that, which is to say, make it less expensive to be tax compliant at a slightly middle or higher end of the tax pyramid. Now, this is a bit of an intellectual debating point. Where do you start? Do you start at the bottom of the pyramid and expand the base there and allow them to creep up the pyramid, or do you expand the pyramid, top of the pyramid to start with? I don't think there is a right answer to that. I think Dr. Swamy will have a particular approach, I may have a particular approach, and Mr. Jaitley has a different approach. If you ask me what my view would have been, I would have preferred that at the 1 crore and above or 50 lakh and above, we make it easier for people to come in and jump into the tax base there, because most of the evasion is happening by his own statistics when you have 1.78 lakh tax payers and 2 crore cars. Obviously, they are not people who have 3 lakhs of income. People who buy cars are people who have incomes of more than 20-25 lakhs. So I would have suggested an approach of improving tax compliance at the middle to high bracket and create some reliefs there to make it easier for people to be less exempt. So on the issue of political funding, let me just say this. I think for anybody who believes that there will be a jump to a perfect solution to political financing at the get-go is mistaken. We'll have to take baby steps. I think the electoral bonds issue, like Manish says, will work very well as a substitute for the check route today that has failed. He is making an argument on why it should not apply to candidates also. I agree with him. I think that could be a very natural progression of the electoral bonds. If it works for the parties, it should be working for candidates as well. But I think, again, I join with Jay on this. We shouldn't diss this. It is early step, but it is a decisive first step, and it indicates that the government and indeed the political class is determined to cleanse black money from the political process. And that is a good thing. Nobody can argue against that.
Jay, has, there's another argument being put forward that has the Prime Minister, to counter the whole caste war, is he starting a new class system where, the poor are he's reaching out more to the poor, taxing the rich?
Look,
The Robin Hood approach. And
look, let's understand something. When we look at the tax structure, when Dr. Swamy says that income tax should be done away with, he represents a very well-established libertarian school of thought which exists not just in India but abroad. And the Indian extension of that argument is that the tax system is unfair, very few people pay taxes, so why not do away with it and only have indirect taxes? Now that could be one radical solution, but there hasn't been enough consensus in any country, let alone India, for that. Now what is being attempted now is to do both. Rajeev was saying whether you widen the top of the pyramid or the bottom, actually if you look at what's been happening, it's both. Because the rationalization at the bottom means you make it easy to enter at the bottom. And when you add a 10% surtax at the top, Indian tax rates are not among the highest in the world. They are in fact reasonable compared to many other countries. So this is a burden. I don't think it's that much of a burden, but I think a lot more needs to be done because you can't have this tiny sliver of the population paying taxes because they will feel victimized unless the entire system is expanded dramatically. I'm putting a lot of store in something that was said in passing. It was said that the whole effort will be to reduce the human contact which creates harassment, which creates corruption, and to make it more automated, make it more simple. 2,500 crores put in for a fund to promote digital transactions. These are the areas in which I'm keeping some hope.
That's a good point. There's the whole digitization and the fear of the tax.
That's fine. It's going to take some time for it to come. People are not against paying taxes in this country. They just don't like this harassment. And those who have faced the harassment know it.
Yes.
I have faced the harassment because I don't deal with my taxes. My wife, who's a lawyer, deals it, and she's far superior than any taxman I can think of. The issue is this, you see. What are we debating in a budget? How to accelerate the growth rate and spread the production more evenly. Essentially, that's the growth with social justice as the old hackneyed phraseology. Now here, you have the economic surveys say it's clear that the recorded GDP growth in the second half of financial year 2017 will understate the overall impact of demonetization because the most affected part of the economy, informal and cash based, are either not captured in the national income accounts or to the extent their measurement is based on formal sector indicators. And therefore he says the growth rate will be as low, could be as low as below 7%, 6.7%. Now this is what the economic survey says, and the exact opposite the finance minister is saying. That is a revolution and so on and so forth. So I think what therefore we need is somebody to sit down and really create a brains trust to discuss this, because I don't think this budget is addressed the main problem of our country, that is the approaching stagnation, the likelihood of a banking collapse, and that if the oil prices go up to $70 per barrel,
Then what do we do?
we are in the royal soup. There's a claim that the current account deficit in the balance of payments is now much lower than before. But why? Both exports and imports have fallen, that the economic survey says. So the ailments in the economy and addressing those ailments squarely instead of doing a PR job, that's what we need today.
Okay, well, we've had quite an insightful discussion on the budget. I think there's scope for much more discussions, but right now we run out of time. So we'll see you again same time next week.